So, what does it take to defeat an army of iron tanks when all you have is faith and a voice? Today, we're going to dive into an ancient story where the fate of a whole nation hinged on just that, an unlikely leader and an even more unlikely victory.
Think about that for a second. In an age that was all about iron weapons and powerful kings, the key to freedom wasn't found on a battlefield. Nope. It was found in the voice of a woman, whose authority didn't come from a sword, but from something else entirely.
So, here's how we're going to break down this incredible story. We'll start in a land ruled by iron, then meet the voice that challenged it. We'll see a warrior's hesitant call to arms, watch a battle get turned completely upside down by a storm, uncover a shocking twist involving a hammer and a tent peg, and finally pull out the lessons this victory teaches us even today.
Okay, first things first, let's set the scene. To really get this, you have to understand what the world was like for the people of ancient Israel. And honestly, it was a time of huge hardship and despair. See, the nation had kind of drifted away from their faith, and the consequences were severe. They found themselves totally crushed by a powerful and ruthless king named Jabin. And this wasn't just a minor inconvenience. We're talking 20 long years of harsh, grinding oppression.
To keep his boot on their necks, King Jabin had a military advantage that was, for that time, pretty much invincible. He had 900 of them. And yeah, we are not talking about simple wooden carts here. We're talking about 900 iron chariots. This was the absolute peak of military tech. They were literally the tanks of the ancient world, fast, deadly, and absolutely terrifying. And they were all under the command of a fearsome general named Sisera. But, against this backdrop of iron and fear, a very different kind of power was at work. And this is where the real adventure begins. Now, in this era, before Israel had kings, God would raise up these leaders they called judges. And their job was, well, it was everything. They were part military hero, part Supreme Court justice, and part national guide, all rolled into one. It was a really unique role. And this is where the story takes a hard turn. I mean, think about the contrast. While kings like Jabin were ruling from these big, fortified thrones, our hero, Deborah, was holding court under a simple palm tree. Her power wasn't in weapons or armies, it was in her divine wisdom and the fact that the people trusted her. Okay, so we've got our oppressor and our unlikely leader. Now comes the moment that lights the fuse. A call to action is given, but the response is definitely not a simple yes. So a message comes to Deborah straight from God, and it is a bold, dangerous plan. She is to find a warrior named Barak and tell him to gather an army of 10,000 men to go up against Sisera's supposedly unbeatable iron chariots. But Barak hesitates. And can you blame him? Facing 900 iron chariots with just foot soldiers, that sounds like a suicide mission. So his response to Deborah is basically, look, I'll go, but only if you go with me. He knew her presence meant God's presence, and he wasn't about to walk into that fight without it.
Deborah agrees to go, but then she delivers this startling prophecy. She tells him, okay, but because you hesitated, the ultimate glory for defeating the enemy general, Sisera, isn't going to go to you. It's going to a woman. Now, in that culture, that was a shocking thing to say, and it totally sets the stage for a major twist.
And so the stage is set. It's time for the final showdown. 10,000 foot soldiers against 900 iron chariots. This is it, the supreme ordeal, where absolutely everything is on the line. This is the impossible question, right? On paper, this should be a massacre. Barak's men were infantry, totally exposed on a wide-open plain, which is the perfect killing ground for chariots. So how could they possibly survive, let alone win? Well, when the battle finally kicks off, the answer doesn't come from military strategy. It comes from the sky. A massive storm just erupts out of nowhere. Rain starts pouring down, the nearby river floods its banks, and the entire battlefield turns into a giant pit of mud. And that was the game changer. The Canaanites' single greatest weapon became their downfall. The heavy iron wheels just sank deep into this thick, sucking mud, completely immobilizing their whole army. Their greatest strength became their own trap. The battle is won. But hold on, the story is not over, not by a long shot. Remember that prophecy from Deborah? Well, now we get to see its stunning conclusion. Amidst all the chaos, General Sisera ditches his useless chariot and just runs for it. He ends up seeking shelter in the tent of Jael, a woman whose husband had an alliance with his king, so he thinks he's found a safe house. He thinks he's in the clear.
Jael offers him hospitality, she gives him some milk, and he's so exhausted he just falls into a deep sleep. But then, in this quiet, deliberate, and frankly shocking act, she takes the everyday tools of her life, a hammer and a tent peg, and she ends the life of Israel's oppressor, fulfilling Deborah's prophecy down to the very last letter. So this ancient story is obviously way more than just a dramatic war account. It's absolutely packed with these timeless truths about courage, faith, and what leadership really looks like.
When you look at the key players here, a really powerful theme starts to emerge. A woman, Deborah, was chosen to lead the whole nation. Another woman, Jael, delivered the final blow with household tools. And the warrior, Barak, he acted despite his fear. It just goes to show you that true courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being willing to act in faith, even when you're hesitant.
And this right here is where this ancient story becomes super personal. Look, we may not be facing armies with iron chariots, but we all have our own Siseras, don't we? They're those overwhelming challenges, the fear, the self-doubt, all the pressures that tell us we can't possibly succeed.
And that leaves all of us with a final question to really think about. What's the seemingly impossible battlefield in front of you? And, like Deborah and Barak and Jael, will you have the faith to take that first decisive step?